In NBA history, there have been a lot of terrible draft busts. From college standouts to international phenoms, sometimes a player's game just doesn't translate to the professional level. Today we're going to talk about the worst of those players, the guys drafted with the first overall pick that didn't pan out in the NBA. But before we start, let's set some rules. I'm not going to include guys who didn't have a chance to play more than 5 seasons of basketball due to injury. That means guys like Greg Oden will not be making an appearance today. I'm also not including anyone pre-Kareem, aka pre-1969. It just doesn't seem fair to compare Andy Tonkovic, the first pick of the 1948 BAA draft by the Providence Steamrollers, to a first overall pick like Kwame Brown. And no, I didn't make up that name. Andy Tonkovic is a real player who played only 17 games of professional basketball. And lastly, I'm not going to include guys still currently in the NBA, though I don't think any of those guys would make this list. Now on to some honorable mentions. The first honorable mention is Purvis Ellison, the first overall pick in 1989. Normally when a guy becomes a star, it's a name that just makes sense. LeBron James sounds like a star. Steph Curry sounds like a star. Kevin Durant sounds like a star. Unfortunately, Purvis Ellison does not. Nicknamed Never Nervous Purvis, Ellison did play over 10 seasons in the league, but he could never stay healthy. The reason why Purvis doesn't crack the list is because in his only healthy season, he put up 20 points and 11 rebounds a game, winning Most Improved Player in 1992. However, Purvis played only 60 games in a season only 3 times in his career and ultimately retired in 2001, ending his career with averages of 10 points and 7 rebounds a game. The second honorable mention is Andrea Bargnani, the Italian sensation who was drafted by the Raptors with the first overall pick in 2006. While the stats look good on paper, putting up double-digit points in every season in the league except his last one, the impact wasn't truly there. He was a second option on teams that could barely finish over 500, and when it seemed like Bargnani was about to take the next step, he couldn't stay healthy, playing over 45 games in a season only once after he turned 26. Again, the stats look nice, but for a guy who was once proclaimed the next Dirk, you probably would have wanted a little more from Bargnani. Before we get into the top 5 list, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more NBA videos just like this one. Now let's get started. At number 5 we have Kent Benson. The 1977 NBA draft saw the Milwaukee Bucks select Kent Benson with the first overall pick. Unfortunately for Benson, his NBA career started out rough when Kareem punched Benson in his first game, causing Benson to experience a concussion and receive cuts that would require stitches. Benson's career never picked up much from that, and within 3 years in the NBA, he would be traded from the Bucks to the Pistons for 31-year-old past his prime Bob Lanier. The modern-day equivalent of that would be if Zion Williamson got sucker punched by Anthony Davis in his first professional game, sucked for the first 3 years of his career, and got traded for 2023 Kevin Love. Not exactly what you would like from a first overall pick. Benson ultimately played 10 seasons in the NBA, averaging 9 points and 6 rebounds for his career. Not a terrible career for an NBA player, but when players like Jack Sigma and Bernard King are in your draft, and you can't even crack over 10 points a game for your career averages, you unfortunately deserve to be on this list. At number 4 we have Kwame Brown. Brown is probably one of the most infamous draft busts of all time after being taken number 1 overall in 2001, ahead of guys like Paul Gasol, Tony Parker, and Joe Johnson. Expectations were high for the high school phenom, and he completely disappointed in his rookie season, averaging an abysmal 4.5 points per game on 39% shooting. While Brown would occasionally show flashes of greatness, like putting up a 30-point 19-rebound performance against the Kings in his 3rd season in the league, he never found his footing in the league, struggling with nagging injuries and many skill-related issues. And after stints with 7 different teams in 11 years, Brown retired from the game of basketball. After his career, we know Brown is one of the worst draft busts of all time, and one of the trade pieces used by the Lakers to acquire Pau Gasol from the Grizzlies. When you're most well known as a guy who got traded for the guy who won your former team a championship, it probably means your career didn't go too well, and in Brown's case, that statement is correct. At number 3 we have Michael Ola Candy. In Ola Candy's case, he was actually a decent NBA player. In the grand scheme of first overall picks, Ola Candy definitely ranks near the bottom of the list, but there were years where Ola Candy, the first overall pick of the 1998 NBA draft to the LA Clippers, looked okay, averaging double-digit points and putting up almost 10 boards a game during his prime. but the biggest reason why Ola Candy ranks so low is because of the players selected below him. He was the first overall pick in the 1998 NBA draft, which saw the Raptors trade for Vince Carter at pick 5, the Mavericks trade for Dirk Nowitzki at pick 9, and the Celtics select Paul Pierce at pick 10. That's 3 future Hall of Famers the Clipper passed on to take Ola Candy. But what makes this pick even worse is that Ola Candy's struggles aren't really the Clippers' fault. They tried their best to develop Ola Candy, even bringing in Kareem Abdul-Jabbar to work with Ola Candy in private sessions. Instead, Ola Candy didn't respect or listen to Kareem's advice, and he was out of the league 9 seasons into his career. At number 2, we have Gloria Martin. It was truly a toss-up between Martin and the number 1 player on this list of who is the worst draft bust of all time, but I ultimately decided that Martin should be second because, well, you'll see later. Martin was the first overall pick in the 1972 NBA draft over future league MVPs Julius Erving and Bob McAdoo, but Martin wasn't even supposed to be the first overall pick. There were rumors around the league that Bob McAdoo, the presumed number 1 overall pick, had already signed with the ABA, so NBA Commissioner Walter Kennedy advised all teams not to draft McAdoo. The Trailblazers, who owned the first overall pick in the 1972 draft, obliged and took Martin with that first overall pick. However, the Buffalo Braves, who owned the second pick in the 1972 draft, knew something the Trailblazers didn't. McAdoo's secret contract with the ABA voided because he was too young to have signed it. So the Braves selected McAdoo and ended up with a 30-point-per-game scorer who won MVP just 3 seasons after being drafted. Meanwhile, the Trailblazers selected Gloria Martin, who played a grand total of 4 seasons in the NBA. And at number 1, I have Anthony Bennett. You just knew Bennett would be on this list, and things were doomed from the start for Bennett's career, when David Stern called Bennett's name and Bill Simmons responded on national television by saying, "I need medical help." Bennett struggled to adjust to an NBA pace, needing 5 games and 17 shot attempts to score his first basket. He played only 12.8 minutes per game in his first season in the league, averaging 4.2 points per game, shooting 36% from the field. Just a season later, Bennett was packaged with the 2014 number 1 overall pick Andrew Wiggins to Minnesota in the Kevin Love trade. He played 1 season in Minnesota, and while slightly better than his rookie season, still struggled. The Timberwolves then bought him out of his rookie contract after only 1 season on the team. The next 2 seasons, Bennett would sign with the Raptors and the Nets, playing limited minutes on both of those teams. And after his season with the Nets, no team wanted a part of the Anthony Bennett experience. Bennett was out of the league at age 23, playing only 151 games in his NBA career. Nowadays, Bennett plays overseas ball and just recently signed a deal to play in Taiwan. But for now, Bennett sits as the worst number 1 overall pick ever, and it's honestly going to be hard for anyone to beat him out. That does it for this video. Thanks for watching, like the video, and subscribe if you want more NBA videos just like this one.